Hello everyone, this is Terzealous Vandal signing in. This edition of Back to Basics is appropriately titled Dog Days. Now you might be asking, what's this guy talking about? I'm no dog. Now I'm sure you're not. But if you're like me and just about 100% of the Dark Souls community, chances are you've become well acquainted with our old friend the Grim Reaper. Death is as expected in Dark Souls as one might expect sunshine in the morning. Doesn't matter whether your preference is player versus environment or player versus player. It's bound to happen. So for all intensive purposes, this video will seek to enlighten my viewers by accomplishing the task of identifying the three aspects of death for the Dark Souls player. One is how we die. Two is why we die. And three, what can we do to avoid death? Now I use the word avoid because I do not believe you can completely avoid dying in this game, especially in the realm of PvP. But what we can do is seek to accomplish is minimizing the occurrences. Now let's go to a clip. Now this is a perfect example of a noob playing Dark Souls and thinking this is Devil May Cry or God of War. This game will punish noobs and you will either rage quit or wise up quickly. Now let's go to another clip. Now as we can see in the second clip, the player took a more rational approach. They assessed the situation and took a more defensive stance using a divide and conquer strategy. The law of trial and error applied greatly to the player in player versus environment, as all that is really necessary for advancement is trial and error, and eventually success will be yours. However, PvP is an entirely different beast altogether. Let's look at some clips of lost duels I've had and try to see where I went wrong. The first two were mock duels to demonstrate a point. The other one was an actual duel. Now in watching this clip, it's important to pay attention to the constant damage I begin to receive from my enemy. Rather than reacting to it and possibly evading or getting away, I continue to pursue my course of action and trying to counterattack, and it results in obvious failure. Now in that last clip, it was obvious to see the importance of knowing when is the right time to back off from a choice of action. It could have been possible to have prolonged the fight and possibly had a chance to win had I just stopped and instead of trying to commit to doing that counterattack, just backed off. That's it. Sometimes you have to just know when to retreat and try to replan and revise what your course of action will be. Now in this clip, we have a bit of a different circumstance. First, we see a little bit of overzealousness from landing some initial good attacks, and this causes us to throw a bit of caution to the wind by repeating the same exact maneuver over and over again, thus making ourselves pretty predictable to our opponent and making a win secured, not for ourselves, but for them instead. that last clip, it was important for us to realize when a plan of action or a course of action does not seem to be successful, and perhaps your opponent begins to start fishing. We clearly saw a lack of ability to be successful with consistent strikes towards our opponent, but rather than stop and revise, once again, we continued with our course of action, and it resulted for easy fishing for our opponent on our end, and resulted in a victory for them and not for ourselves. Sun Tzu, a famous military strategist, once said, "The opportunity to secure ourselves against defeat lies in our own hands, but the opportunity of defeating the enemy is provided by the enemy himself." What this tells us is in order to achieve victory in battle, the answer to why we lose can be simply found by reflecting on the reasons behind each one of those defeats, effectively turning a loss into a victory. And instead of just rushing in, take time even for a few seconds to study your opponent, and you may find that the key to his own defeat will be displayed in his own actions without you having to do much of anything at all. Take a look at a rematch with the gentleman I had the last fight with to get my meaning. So in closing, when we stop and we reflect on the deficiencies in our combat ability, we need to ask ourselves where our strengths and weaknesses are. If we're honest with where we are weak, we can actively work on training ourselves to weed out those weaknesses and imperfections and make ourselves a stronger fighter overall. Everybody has to start from somewhere, so you shouldn't feel bad if you lose a fight or two, or maybe even 3, or maybe even 4 or 5. But the key is to continue fighting, and make a good assessment of why you lost each fight. When you're in each and every fight, you should be looking at your opponent and studying what kind of gear they're wearing, what type of weapon they're using, and what's the best way that you can counter a possible strategy from them. There's no need to rush in. You can take your time and assess what type of fighting ability that they have, or perhaps what type of play style they display, and this will allow you to effectively overcome them, or at least get close to doing so. With time and practice and good assessments, you will be guaranteed a definite increase in your combat ability. I want to thank you all for watching. As always, if you have any questions or comments, or even general advice such as on my combat technique, on video ideas, or anything in general, feel free to post them, and I'll do my best to respond in a timely fashion. If I managed to entertain you today, please feel free to like and subscribe, as this will only motivate me to produce future videos, and my goal is to produce the highest quality of videos possible for all my viewers. I'd like to give a shout out to Chinese Dim Sum, who's featured in the Fight Club fights for this video, an excellent fighter and an even better person. I'd also like to give a shout out to Thievish Aura 42, another member of the Fight Club, and has been a great supporter as far as feedback and just general enthusiasm for me for my channel. So I want to thank you both, guys. On that note, this is Terzalus Vandal, signing out.